A very good afternoon, everybody. Myself, Mamta here, and today I'm here to present a topic on operating system, that is file management. File management is a major topic that is to be studied in operating system. First of all, let's go through the outline of the lecture. There is file management, file operations, different terminologies that are used in file, and the system of file management, that is file management system, the requirements of a file, elements of a file system, and then there will be file organization. First of all, what we define as a file management, it is a system which consists of the system utility programs that run as privileged applications, and input to these application is by means of a file. File is basically a collection of records which is input to the system so that programs can be run as privileged applications, and the output of this input is saved in a file for long term storage, that is for the permanent use. What are the different properties of a file system? First of all, there is a long term existence of the file. Files can be shareable between processes, and most important is the structure of the file, which can be very easily understood by anybody. Then different operations that can be performed on various files, these are create file, delete file, open a file, close a file, read and write a file. Different terms which are used with files, the terminology of the file are, first of all, there is a field which is the basic element of data. It contains a single value and it is characterized by the length of the field and its data type. Then there comes record, which is the collection of related field and it is treated as a single unit. For example, employee is a record having field its name, its age and its address, etc. File, after record there comes file. File is a collection of similar records. Again, it is treated as a single entity having particular names and provides some restricted access. Then there comes the database, which is the collection of related data and the relationship that exists among the elements of the data. The typical operations that can be performed on files are retrieve all, retrieve one record, retrieve next record, retrieve previous record, or insert one, delete one, update one, and retrieve few. These are the typical operations that can be performed on a file to update or to delete or to retrieve or to insert some records or the files. What is a file management system? Basically, it is a system that is used to manage different files, how different files are managed in a system and how particular access is provided to these files. It is a way in which a user of application may access the files, and the programmer does not need to develop file management software to manage different files. Rather, we are having input output interfaces to manage the file system. Objectives of a file management system are to meet the data management needs and the requirements of the user, and to guarantee that the data in the file are valid, and to optimize the performance, and to provide input output support for a variety of storage devices types, and to minimize or eliminate the potential for the loss of the data or the data which is to be destroyed. It provides a standardized set of input output interface routines to deal with the data, and it also provides input output support for multiple users to provide multiple access to the data. What are the minimal set of requirements for a file management system? These are: each user should be able to create, delete, read, write or modify the files. Each users may have controlled access to other users' files, means no one user can have access to files of another users unless otherwise they are provided some particular control over those files. Each user may control what type of data and what type of accesses are allowed to the files of different users. Each user should be able to restructure the files of a user in an appropriate form so that we can find out the solution of a particular problem. Every user should be able to move data from one file to another file. Each user should be able to backup and recover the user files in case of any damage. One should keep backup record of the files that are susceptible to damage. Each user should be able to access user's file by using particular symbolic names. Here comes the architecture of the file management system software. At the lowest level, there are the device drivers, then comes the basic file system and basic input output supervisor, then there is logical input output system. After that, there comes the different organization of a file. It can be a pile, sequential organization, indexed sequential organization, indexed organization and hashed organization. Next comes the user programs that interact with these system and the device drivers via some intermediate system. So, device drivers are at the lowest level in the architecture, which communicates directly with peripheral devices. These are responsible for starting any input output operation on a device and the processes the completion of an input output request. Device drivers are responsible for all these things, for performing the input output operation and for providing the completion of any input output request. Then there comes the basic file system in the hierarchy, which is a physical input output system that deals with exchanging the blocks of data, and these are concerned with the placement of blocks. These are concerned with buffering of blocks in main memory. Next is basic input output supervisor, which is responsible for file input output initiation and termination. Means input output supervisor is responsible for the initialization and completion of input output operations on a file. Then there are some control structures that are also maintained by the supervisor. These are concerned with selection of the device on which the file input output is to be performed. Means to perform some input output operations, the selection of a particular hardware device is done by the supervisor. It is also concerned with the scheduling access to the optimized performance. To minimize the performance of the CPU, they are also concerned with the scheduling access, means how to access the files in which order, and these are also a part of operating system. Then in hierarchy there comes the logical input output systems, which enables the user and applications to access the records. They provide general purpose record input output capability and They also maintain the basic data about the file. Then there comes different access methods. Access methods are used to define the different file structures. Means what are the structures of the files, different files, and what are the different ways to access those files and process the data into those files. Here is the diagram which shows the file management concern and the operating system concern. Here there is the free storage management. These are the physical blocks in secondary storage, and these are the physical blocks of the data in main memory buffers. And there is a blocking function that happens between the records and the physical storage. Means the data which is stored in disk or in the main memory, they are divided into different blocks or records which are further manipulated by file manipulation functions, and the file structure provide different access methods to access the records of these two memories. And file structure also deals with the user access control and directory management. So these are the elements of a file management system. One side there are the user and program commands, and other side there are the free storage management. User commands are used to access the file structures, means the records in the file structures which are coming from the main memory or from the secondary storage. First of all, the file management functions have to identify and to locate a selected file. Then we have to use a directory to describe the location of all files plus their attributes and their features. On a shared system, describe user access control. File management function is providing blocking for access to the files, mean to provide access to some specific user, not to all the users, and to allocate files to the free blocks, means files are further divided into blocks and each files are kept into free blocks, and to manage free storage which is available for blocks. What is the criteria for file organization? First of all, there should be short access time in which it is needed when accessing of a single record. While accessing a single record, the access time should be short. It is not needed for a batch mode in which the files are arranged in a particular sequence or a batch. Second criteria is the ease of update. As the files written on CD-ROM will not be updated, so this is not a particular concern. Then there is economy of storage. It should be minimum redundancy in the data. While storing the data, the redundancy should be minimum, and redundancy can be used to increase the speed of accesses such as index. Indexing is used to increase the speed of access to the data. Next criteria is the simple maintenance of the files, and then is the reliability of the file organization. In file organization, there comes the first file organization, which is a pile. It is a data which is collected in order in which they arrive. Means in a pile, the data are collected in order in which they come. The purpose of a pile is to accumulate a mass of data and to save it. The records may have different fields in a pile, and pile does not have any particular structure. The record access is done by exhaustive search. This is a diagram which is showing the pile having different size of data, and the data is stored in order in which they come. There are some variable length records There are some variable set of fields in chronological order. Then there comes the sequential file. The sequential file is a file having fixed format which is used for storing the records. Means in a sequential files the records are stored in a particular fixed format and the records will be of same length. All the field of the records will be same, that is their order and their length will be same. Field names and the lengths are the attributes of the sequential file. Sequential files are having the fields and their length, the order of the field and their length. So the name of the field and length are the attributes of a file. One field is the key field which is used for uniquely identifying a particular record, and the records are stored in a key sequence. Then there comes the sequential file. Again, the new records are placed in a log file or a transaction file. The batch updates is performed to merge the log files with the master file. This is a diagram that is showing the sequential file having fixed length records and fixed set of fields in a fixed order. The sequential order, it is based on particular key field. The comparison of a sequential and indexed sequential organization is as explained follows. With an example, if a file contains 1 million records, then on average approximately 50,000 accesses are required to find a record in sequential file. And if an index contains 1000 entries, it will take on average only 500 accesses to find the key, which is followed by 500 accesses in the main file. So as an average there will be 1000 accesses as compared to 50,000 accesses. So the indexed sequential file organization is more easy to access than the sequential order. Indexed sequential file organization contains new records which are added to an overflow file. There is an overflow file in which all new records are added, and record in the main file that precedes it is updated to contain a pointer to the new record. See in the diagram, there is an overflow file and there is a main file. All the pointers from the main file are pointing to the overflow file, which is used to keep all new records. Here in indexed sequential organization, the overflow is merged with main file during a batch update. When we are to update the files, batch of files, then we have to merge overflow file with the main file, and multiple indexes for the same key field can be used to increase the efficiency. Here it is a main file, it is an overflow file which is used to store all the new records. The pointers are pointing from main file to overflow file. When we have to access the batch file, then main file is merged with the overflow file, and from index levels multiple indexes using the same key field can be used to access the records of the main file. Then there comes the indexed file, in which multiple indexes are used for different key fields, may contain an exhaustive index that contain one entry for every record in main file. Means multiple indexes are used and there is a single index for each and every main file. It may contain a partial index also. So this is a diagram which is showing the index file having multiple exhaustive and partial indexes which are used to access the same record in a file. Next comes the direct file organization, or it is also known as hashed file organization. It is directly access a block at known address. A particular address will be given and that block at that address will be accessed, and a key field is required for each record. Then there comes the two level scheme for a directory. One directory for each user and a master directory is used in this two level schema. Master directory contains entry for each user. It provides the address and the access control information for each user. Each user directory is a simple list of files for that user, and it still provides no help in structuring the collection of files. The two level scheme for directory is of no use, because if there are multiple files, then it will be least helpful for structuring those collection of files, but each user will be having each single list of files. Then there comes the hierarchical or tree level directory, in which there is master directory having some user directories under it, and each user directory may have further subdirectories and some files as their entries. In this diagram you can see there is a tree structure directory having master directory at the top level and file systems at the bottom level. Each master directory is having its own subdirectories. Further, subdirectories are having their own individual files. Again, with this diagram you can understand what is a tree structure directory. Here is a master directory having these subdirectories, user systems, and user A is further having a directory of name user A, and user B is having a directory of user B, user C is having a directory of user C. Further, user B directory is further having subdirectories as word and draw. These are the two subdirectories of the directory user B, and this directory is having a file named EBC. This subdirectory is further having a subdirectory unit A, and this subdirectory is having a file named ABC stored in it. So this is the hierarchy of a tree structure directory, in which at the top level there is a master directory, and at the bottom level there is a file which is stored in the subdirectories of the user directory. The files can be located by following a path from the root or master directory down towards various branches. So this is the path name for a file. When we go from top to bottom, it becomes the path name of that file. We can have several files with same file name as long as they have a unique path name in hierarchical directory. The current directory is always a working directory, and the files are referenced to be the working directory. The files are considered to be a working directory, which is considered to be a current directory. Next comes the file sharing. In multi-user systems, it allows the file to be shared among different users. So there comes two different issues while sharing the files among multiple users. First of all, there are the rights to access the files. There are access rights and the management of their simultaneous access to file. These are the two issues which will be considered while the files are shared among users. So there are different categories of access right. First kind of access right is none, in which user cannot know the existence of the file. User is not aware of the existence of the file, so there will be no access. and user is not allowed to read the user directory that includes the file. So these are the rights of the none category, in which users do not have any idea about file, and if user have any idea about file, he is not having any access to the user directory. Next is knowledge. User can only determine that the file exists or not and who is the owner of this file. Execution is another access in which the user can load and execute a program but cannot copy it. Then there is a reading access right, in which the user can only read the file for any purpose, including copying and execution. User can read the file, user can copy the file, and he can execute the file. Then there is appending access. Appending means to add some data. The user can add data to the file but cannot modify or delete any of the file contents. Means user have right to add the data, but user have no right to delete the data from the file. Updating access right includes the user which can modify, delete and add the files data, and this include the creating of the file, rewriting of the file and removing all the parts of the data from the file. The changing protection access right is that in which user can change the access rights which is granted to other users. Mean one user can change the right of access to other user. It can provide or not provide the access to other users. Deletion means user can delete the complete file. Owners is another access right in which owners have all the rights which are listed previously. They can add, they can delete, they can update the file, they can grant a right to other using of the following classes of the user. They can be specific users, they can be user group or some public files. Means owner can provide access rights to the specific users, to some user groups and to everybody for public files. Then there is a simultaneous access in which user can log the entire file when it is to be updated. When a file is to be updated, user can log that entire file after updating. User can log the individual records during the update. User can provide authority to different persons to update only some particular records, because some records will be locked by that simultaneous users. And mutual exclusion and deadlock are the issues which are arised during the shared access for multiple users. Here is a diagram that is showing the fixed blocking of the records. These are the records R1, R2, R3 and R4 which are stored in track 1, and these are having some data in it. This gray space is the gap which is due to some hardware design. This is the diagram in which you can see here is a gray colored area which is a gap which is done during the hardware designing, and this is the portion which is wasted due to the block size constraint from the fixed record size. In the fixed size blocking, there are the records of fixed size. So this is the area which is gone wasted because of the fixed size of the block and fixed size of the record. Similar is the condition with these records which are stored in track 2. This is the area which is wasted due to the record that is fitted to the block size. As record R4 is fit into this block size, so this area is wasted. So there is some variable blocking which is spanned, in which there are the multiple records of variable length which are stored in track 1 and track 2. You can see there is a record R6 and some portion of this record is stored in track 2. The records of variable length are stored in these tracks, and those which are not completed in first track are sent to the